So, okay, so welcome. Thank you very much for giving up your afternoons, evenings, and it looks like one or two night times going on there. This is Keith Roselle. I run a company called Sales Marvel, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to get straight on and share screens because I don't want to take up any more time than we absolutely have to. So let's just share that. Now you should on your screens see an introduction to sales. Is that what you can see? Give us a thumbs up if that's what's working for you. It's just disappeared, but there's a reason for that, which is we're going to go here instead. So, okay, brilliant. Okay, brilliant. So what I'm going to do is because I'm on my own, my virtual assistant Sue won't be with us tonight. I will do my very best to look at the chat box if anyone's got a question. I've got it as a broken out sort of box here, but forgive me if I don't answer any questions straight away. If there's something that's really burning you and it's on the current slide kind of thing, then please feel free to come off of mute. I do not want this to be a lecture, even though I am a lecturer. I'd like this to be a little bit more, shall we say, interactive. No one wants to be lectured to this time of evening. I don't think so anyway. So I'm going to crack straight on if that's okay. So brilliant. So welcome and intros. I would love for you if you can find your chat box, because we've got some interesting locations on this evening. Just put in, introduce yourself, who you are, what discipline you're in, like one or two. We've got some speakers on, we've got some coaches, we've got some salespeople on, which is fantastic, and your location, whereabouts in the world you might be. We're bound to have some Birmingham contingent. I'd be very grateful if amongst all that, how did you hear about this? Was it on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever? Thanks, Mark, from Hythe in Kent, beautiful part of the world. And where would you currently score yourself in selling and working with customers? Where do you think one is not very good? Perhaps I'm just a little rusty starting out, and 10 is I'm brilliant. Of course, if you are a 10, I'm probably gonna shut down and ask you to deliver this instead. So let's get a little bit real. In a nutshell, I am fantastic. Welcome to Sydney. How are you all doing? So in a nutshell, 30 years in corporate sales. I've closed deals of all shapes and sizes, from £100 a month for gym memberships. I recently worked with a hotel chain to create a sales strategy to increase their sales numbers, right up to IT outsourcing, where I helped a software company close a $1.3 billion outsourcing deal. And my experience suggests that actually selling, no matter what you're selling, is pretty similar. No matter what. There's a few nodding heads, which is encouraging. But if anyone wants to come off of mute and start a debate, I'm very happy to do that. Not really the point of this evening. Jonathan Fincher, good to see you made it on the line. As always, was a bit of a worry as to whether everyone's going to be able to get on. But anyway, that's my experience, no matter what the size. Juliana, welcome on. Deal sizes, the principles of selling, the preparation, the messaging, all of that stuff, and Laura too, is all pretty similar. Okay, so I'm now a sales coach and visiting lecturer with Aston Business Schools, which is, although they don't feel comfortable telling everyone, is in the top 1% of business schools in the world. So, and also do a couple of other things. Anyway, cracking on. So what we're going to cover in this next 55 minutes, what sales is, what it isn't, some common myths and mistakes that salespeople, both professional and newcomers, make. I want to showcase some great sales skills, what they are, why they work, and how to get them for yourself. How a Hollywood A-lister does it as well. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Masterclass series that I'm just launching. Some of you will be aware of that already. and then we're going to call it a night, if that's okay. I'd like, first of all, to this guy, Peter Drucker, if anyone's heard of Peter Drucker, one of the great fathers of leadership management. So not just sales, but leadership and business management. And he's had this to say about sales: nothing happens until somebody sells something. Now, I fervently believe that, and you can be the greatest coach, public speaker, business development director, PR and comms guru in the world, but until somebody sells something, then you've got nothing to talk about, deliver. And I'm very sorry if that's a tough message to take, but I fervently believe that's the case. Now, in the UK, sales has got a pretty poor reputation, I am sorry to say. So in chapter 2 of my career, I'm hoping to do two things, which is A, get smaller companies better and more confident at selling and working with people, but B, and this is why I'm so interested in working with business schools, management schools, is working with the next generation of sales professionals, if you like, bringing them on to raise the game. And when I worked in New York, it was a few years ago, but when I worked in New York, I could go to a networking event and I could bump into a lawyer and an accountant who would ask me, Keith, what do you do? I'm in sales. And that profession would be held pretty much in the same regard, if you like, the same status. Don't really like that word, but anyway, for the purposes of this conversation, the same status as a lawyer or accountant. If you tell someone you're in sales in this country, unless you're very lucky, you're held at the same, I don't even want to name any other professions, but anyway, it's not well regarded. So I'm really hoping that we can do something around improving the perception of sales. Anyway, right, so next. The language of selling, like all disciplines, professional disciplines, whether you're writing copy or whether you're in PR and comms or hotel sales management, all disciplines will have their own language, and there's a list of different terms on the screen that you can see. I want to, for the purposes of this conversation, I want to focus on 4 key principles, if you like. And the first one is suspects. And in sales, we've got two types of audiences, if you like. A suspect is someone that we haven't spoken to yet, literally no one we've spoken to yet, but could be in our target audience. We've yet to qualify. You'll see that word on that screen. We've yet to qualify whether we've got a service that customer wants to buy, or even whether we want that kind of customer, because you might be focused on a particular business sector. Let's say you only deal with manufacturing or financial services, so then you already suspect them of wanting that service. Now, the next line in pipeline is a prospect. And I'm very sorry, actually, I'm not sorry, this is basic. This is an introduction to sales. Is mastering the basics is what's going to make us great at sales. Okay, so prospects is someone that you've spoken to. Maybe perhaps you've met them at a networking event, but you've had some kind of encounter with someone at their company. And kind of they pass a smell test, if you like, in terms of, yeah, actually, we could do something. They're the right size, be it small or large, whoever your target audience is. They've got the right sort of profile. Perhaps they pass the commercial credit tests that we need before we can engage. Some sort of qualification, some sort of question and answering exercise has taken place, and they appear on your prospect, and then as a prospect, and then you're more comfortable in talking to your line manager about them as a company, that they're not going to embarrass you by coming out with some information at the very last minute. And how do I know that? Because I've been there, and that's how I know to discern the difference between suspects and prospects. And the next thing I want to talk about is, because we're talking about great sales skills, listening is incredibly important. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth only, and you cannot listen, you cannot learn anything while you're talking. for the most part. So listening and just very briefly, listening is much more than just being quiet and waiting for the other person to stop talking, so that you can jump in with both feet and tell them all the features that your particular product or service has got. So listening is much more than that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. The next thing, if you look on the right hand side in red, is trust. You cannot sell something unless you have built that, what I would call a bridge of trust between you and your prospect or suspect or whoever it is. So building trust is absolutely paramount to the sales experience, I would say. And then lastly, features is a very 1980s way of selling. This smartphone that I have right here, it can do it. It's got a 12 megapixel camera. It's got it can do 5G. It can't, just by the way, but maybe it can do 5G. Those are all features, and some of them are really, really cool, but actually it's what those features allow you to do which become benefits. And that's why thank you, Mark. And that's why benefits are really key, and I'm going to talk about that in a second as well. Two ears, one mouth. Stuck with you since. Absolutely. Another way of saying that is that don't speak unless you can improve the silence. That's another way I've heard it sort of mentioned. So make sure you're adding some value. Okay, right, good, great to see we've got an engaged audience. So on selling, what it isn't is strong arming your opponent, your prospect, your suspect with a half Nelson. Now, putting the political colors aside, we've seen some political strong arming over the weekend, haven't we? Between, take your pick, the North and Westminster, or the EU and Westminster. And I think all people of all political colours in Westminster are getting a pretty strong message that actually you've got to bring the people with you. And business is no different. You've got to bring your stakeholders. If it's a simpler, a higher volume sale, let's say, perhaps you've only got one person to bring with you. If it's a more complex sale where you have to talk to, perhaps you're talking to a university, heaven forbid, you've got to bring a whole bunch of people with you on that sales journey, and building trust is part of that, and not strong arming or bullying or cajoling is equally part of that too. And selling also isn't taking orders. What I mean by that is I used to run the call centers for a large energy services provider. I won't tell you who, because just in case anyone hangs up. But we had an inbound operation where they were pretty much shooting fish in a barrel. People were phoning up wanting to roll their contract over for another year. They were had some queries on their account. That's not really selling. That's more customer service, where they're kind of 90% away along the line, and you're just helping them the last 10% of the journey. I'm not decrying the last 10%. It's pretty important, but that's not the selling I'm talking about. But what it is influencing, persuading someone to buy a product or service from you rather than your competition, or worse, in my estimation, is buying nothing at all. So for whatever reason, no one's able to persuade them to buy, or perhaps they were out just kicking the tires of the market anyway, just to work out whether they can save their team, because their team's delivering at a lower cost price, a lower cost than the market can deliver a particular service. For the HR outsourcing is a really heavy topic at the moment because of COVID, and there's lots of people that are trying to get into battle, if you like, trying to sell their HR services. It's a tough sell, not impossible, but there has to be a really compelling reason to buy something like that. So for me, excuse me, closing a sale is simply the natural conclusion to a well-qualified conversation. They've been a suspect, we've had a conversation, they've become a prospect, and you take them through the process, you ask open questions, you learn something about that client, and you decide, yes, my service will deliver, will fit your need, and it becomes almost an I'm not going to say effortless, effortless with a small e perhaps, but you don't have to strong arm anyone. It is a natural conclusion, and coaching in particular should be like that, because we're not buying a piece of tin, where you're effectively funding a relationship going forward. So if anyone disagrees with that, feel free to say so. But that's how I feel in my heart that what sales is. So some common myths here. To be great at selling, you have to be the life and soul of the party. You've got to be swinging from those chandeliers, or you've got to be out there somehow. I don't believe that's true, and certainly if I'm not that kind of person. Yeah. Okay, poor sales techniques. Yes, absolutely, Mark. Yeah, I'm with you on the money. Incidentally, by the way, if anyone, when we get to the end of the session around 7:30, you can save the chat just in case you want to. If anyone wants to put their LinkedIn URL, you're very welcome to do so. Often these turn into networking events, and that's fantastic if you can make contacts. So anyway, you don't have to be the life and soul of the party, otherwise I would have failed a very long time ago. And also, you have to want a Ferrari. You have to be highly aspirational. And I'm not sat here saying Ferraris are rubbish cars. They're absolutely not. They're wonderful cars. And there's just something that happens to you when you turn the key and kind of rev it. There's just something that happens to your blood pressure. That's a beautiful thing. But you don't have to want a Ferrari. In fact, when I was at EDS, a big technology outsourcing organization, the guy that sat a couple of desks away from me closed the deal with a public sector organization for $4.2 billion. It was the defense infrastructure investment. Well, I probably am going back a few years, but anyway, it's a big, really big number. And that guy earned seven plus figures out of that deal, and he drove round. Peter drove round in a 35-year-old MG. You'd never know. You'd never see him coming. He always dressed appropriately, but you would never know about this mammoth sort of Leviathan business deals that he's done. It was really charming to observe. Ross Perot, yes, indeed. Ross Perot would have done. He would have rescued him from Iran. Absolutely, Mark. So, okay, brilliant. Tim Swift, okay, welcome along, Tim. Okay, and also you've got to be a great liar. For anyone that's seen this movie, The Good Liar, great movie. But no, absolutely, there have been some people and some organizations that have made a lot of money out of lying to customers and or mis-selling. And if anyone's heard of PPI, and all of that stuff that goes on, that's all stuff that goes on, selling stuff that customers don't need or want, an important distinction. But you sell it because it's what you need to do your target. That lacks integrity. And for me, that's exactly the sort of behaviors that we want to see getting out of selling, so that we can get some sales professionalism going on. That's what I feel. Okay, and your role as the salesperson is to determine what the customer wants to buy, if you like, their needs. Why are they coming to the market? What is it that's driven them to that? And every need is different. You could go to the same organization and speak to 3 different people in that organization. You'll always get a slightly different story going from person to person. That's why it's such a complex and nuanced topic. You also want to decide whether you can meet that customer's need, and they're going to have multiple needs, but generally they're around price, timescales, and some sort of qualitative metric. So you've got to decide, do they want to buy a Mercedes, or do they want to buy a Chevy? I'm using the car thing, but they might also want to buy Tiffany or Harry Winston, whatever it's going to be. But that's the kind of thing. Also, because as the salesperson, you have rights too in the conversation, whether that customer and this is part of the qualification process, whether they can meet your need to achieve a certain price or a certain profit ratio, margin, we would call that, whether you can meet their timescales. Perhaps they want something tomorrow and you just can't do that. And in other words, you will need to back off and get that customer to re-evaluate. Do they really need it tomorrow? Why do they need it tomorrow? All those things. Or whether there's a quality mismatch. Perhaps they just want to buy cheap and dirty, which is down here, and you sell high volume or lower volume but high quality, which is right up here. There's a mismatch. So that's your responsibility to determine. And ultimately, whether, even if you meet all those criteria and that your prospect or suspect meets those criteria, whether they're going to buy from you, that's your responsibility. So how do you do that? Again, I believe trust. Once you've got trust, credibility, all those things that flow from that, then that's almost the foundation that you can start building that high gain conversation we were talking about earlier. So here's a question for you. Should you sell prospects what they need, what they want, or what? And to do this, I am going to experiment here by, can I do this? No, it's not going to let me. Don't worry. Okay, so anyway, in the chat box, should you sell someone what they want or what they need? What do you think? I'm just going to pause for a few seconds while I see some answers coming in and take a slurp. What they want or what they need? I don't mind what the answer is. Both from Laura. Okay, welcome, Laura. Want from Julius. Yeah, okay. What they need and explain. Yeah, okay. Well, we've got some experienced people on the line. That's fantastic. Okay, so here I believe you should sell them what they want to buy in the short term. And from that, I am, okay, what they think they want and then ask questions around that. Absolutely. I kind of, now, okay, so maybe this is where it's a judgment call, but I believe if you sell them what they want to buy right here, right now, I believe that's what their personal need is, and you need to satisfy. You've got to scratch that itch for them, if you like. And that paves the way, because people are on a journey and they may not be an experienced buyer. You may be an experienced salesperson or experienced business person. And in reality, you know they need this over here, but they're going to buy this over here, and you go on a journey. And if you sell them what they want to buy, you are then in a position to take them, I beg your pardon, on that journey. So that's really interesting to see where people are at in terms of their thinking. We would all love to sell people what they need as a business, what they need as a person, but it's always interesting to find out where their heads and their hearts are at in terms of what do they want to buy right here, right now. Okay, so also sometimes you're not the only person doing the selling. Sometimes you're part of an entire team that are, and you could be part of a small company but selling to a big organization. And you could, perhaps you're Julius, you wouldn't want to take one of your people, perhaps a subject matter expert with you, perhaps even a project manager whose job it will be to deliver the overall solution for that client. You're going to have to effectively be the orchestra conductor. So you're going to have to take your team with you. And if you've got multiple people from your company meeting multiple people at the client, can be, if unprepared or unrehearsed, that's a recipe to have tea and biscuits and nothing happens. And so all your people have to be prepped. And this is why you need to over-prepare at the start. Assuming you've done all the qualification, and if you're going to win an acceptable price, be it big, small, whatever, but assuming you want that deal, you've got to prep your people in terms of, Mark, I need you to deliver this message in this way to that person in the room. Or, Juliana, I need you to deliver that message to that person. People receive information in different ways. And as the salesperson, I've almost got, and therefore you also, almost have a conflict of interest, because your entire agenda is to make sure that sale happens. A project manager or a subject matter expert doesn't have that conflict. And they could be the exact same words, but coming out of their mouth, it has much more credibility than coming out of your mouth. So be aware of that dynamic. That really bruised me when I was told about that, because I really wanted to help, feel like I was helping customers. But actually, that's how human dynamics typically work. Okay, you need to make sure, as you're the conductor of that meeting, the conductor of that particular orchestra, you need to make sure the meeting is achieving its objectives. You're not going down a rat hole somewhere, that you're on track throughout the meeting, and that you're satisfying that customer's needs, they're hearing the right messages, etc. This is a massive subject, and I'll talk about this on its own at a later stage, not during this. But and also, when you're there observing, making sure people are delivering their messages, you can also learn who the most powerful person in the deal is. And I can tell you now, it's not always the most senior person in the room. They may be there to bless that deal in some way, but it's not always. When I worked with a big US investment bank, I was 25 years on Canary Wharf, and a client of mine, this bank, we got almost down to contractual terms and conditions with a reasonable sized deal, and it was vetoed almost at the 11th hour because someone quite low down, a vice president, of which there must be 300 in Morgan Stanley and Canary Wharf, someone vetoed the deal because it wasn't the right technology. It wouldn't have fitted with their existing infrastructure or their existing estate. Now, if I'd have covered that base from day one by bringing them into my pursuit strategy, then I wouldn't have had that issue. I would have that wouldn't have tripped me up. So it doesn't have to be the most powerful, the most senior person in the room. And also, when you're taking people with you, less is more. There's less to go wrong. Justify why they're there, no passengers, and think really carefully about any of those, just in case, because they can be dilutory. They can dilute the effectiveness and the excitement of what's going on. Okay, brilliant. Excuse me. Right, so I'm going to talk now about a best practice sales process, something that I've put together over years, decades in the sales sort of profession. Here's a list of the phases 1 to 7, and I just want you to have a look at those. Hopefully they come out okay on your screen. They're not in the right order on the left-hand side, and I wonder if anyone wants to kind of take a guess again in the chat box about what discipline should go in the uppermost box, in box number 1. Should they be going to market first? Should they be negotiating or closing first? Just put a number if you like. I just want to see where everyone's kind of at. How are we doing? Sydney's been really quiet of late. Sell them what they want. Absolutely well done, Sydney. I missed that when I came in. Okay, okay. I'm thinking. I can hear from here. Lead for 1 from MC. Okay, all right then. Jonathan says number 2, lead generation. Absolutely, we want leads. Okay, right. So here is, and this is me. Your business may work subtly differently, but I believe before you spend any money on marketing, on trade shows, on anything, you've got to be thinking about what is it that we kind of do? What, in essence, is our value proposition. That for me comes number one before you spend any money on marketing or anything else like that. Okay, right. So well done, Mark. Value proposition number one. And this is really hard, by the way. If you've got something complex to sell, services are particularly hard to work with. Coaching in particular is hard because, you know, how many coaches are there out there? How do you put a form of words together that differentiates you from your competition, but also talks to your target market? How do you do that? That's not easy. But I believe value proposition comes next. And then when we've got that, we can think about how do we take those messages to market. We want to generate not just leads, but the right kind of leads that are going to be productive and profitable for us to work on. We are going to get some leads coming in, but we need to qualify. We need to ask some more questions. And that qualification process, that could be over the phone in 5 minutes, or it could take 18 months if it's a particularly complex pursuit. Then we're going to have a pursuit strategy, which is that software deal that I talked about earlier on. 280 people were involved in that deal over a period of time, about half from my company, about half from their company, from the client company, lots and lots of stakeholder management going on. And also negotiate and close. Which I've tied into the same process, because often you can move, you think you're going to close, but you've got to come back and negotiate. I believe they're firmly intertwined, and you'll need to dance a little bit sometimes, particularly when it comes around price. And I'm from, I'm not from Yorkshire, but I'm in Yorkshire. And the one thing they know in Yorkshire is about the value of a pound. What do they say? A definition of a Yorkshireman is a Scots person stripped of their generosity. That's what they would. That was what they would say. Okay. Now, if you've been looking down the left-hand side and compared it to the right-hand side, you'll see that negotiate and close is not the last step. So, what is the last step? I believe once you've got that client and you're trading with them, that actually the road is paved for a new relationship, and you can sell them other things once you've got that. Hence, sell them what they want. Always be closing. Glengarry Glen Ross, Sydney. If you've seen that movie, great movie. Okay, so maximizing yield from that client in many different ways, and I'll talk about that in a second. So here we go. Yes, it's about the rebuy. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so this is a pretty old chart these days, but Albert Meridian, I believe, was the name. So as you're listening to me here, if you are still listening, and this is really hard on Zoom versus face to face. I think most people would agree that, but people are only generally taking notice of the words I say is about 7% of the received learning experience, just the words. The remaining 93% is what we would call non-verbal clues. And again, this is around what's that got to do with selling? Absolutely everything to do with selling. So it's 38% is going to be the tone of my voice, which could go up if I'm asking a question, or it might come right down if I'm trying to make a particular point and I want to make it with, shall we say, I'm going to use gravitas or with authority or something like that. So tonality of voice, really, really important. And also body language. It always drives my wife wild that I wave my arms around a lot. There's no Italian in me, but that's it's just something I do. I can't help it. But also when you're on screen, it's a moving image, so it keeps people more engaged if you can kind of wave your arms a little bit. So and risks to your presentation, which you may not be able to read clearly on the screen, but there are 3 types of risks to your presentation, which is children. Well, now many of us are working from home, so we've got young children running around. That famous thing on that we all saw with the ambassador to South Korea and the children coming through into the room, fantastic, but it went viral. So children can mess that up. Animals, they can mess that up. But also in this world where we're working from home, dependent on technology, particularly dependent IT, that can all mess you up. Okay, so here we go. Here's the sales value creation model. Now, here's what I call a value stack, also known as a Zeeman pyramid, Z-Y-M-A-N or Z-Y-M-A-N, depending on where in the world you are. So if any of you, let's take a business coach, okay? I know there's one or two on. I'm guessing, well, I can tell you now, there's millions of business coaches. If you on your LinkedIn, you've got business coach, I'm afraid that's too broad. You're going to have to really think about that. So let's say someone wants to buy some business coaching, and you're a business coach. That puts you in the me too. Okay, you want to buy some business coaching. I sell business coaching. We must surely be a great fit. Well, it doesn't really work like that. That's just me too. You've got to try and get yourself to that middle layer, at least the difference. What's different about you? It's called your value proposition. Now, you should, if you know enough about what you do, you should be able to articulate some sort of difference yourself. I'm different to this person because, I don't know, I've got different experiences, or I'm a beta male, which I am, versus an alpha male, and the beta male is going to frustrate some people, but it's going to be easier for others. And I kind of, I can't keep everyone happy. That's just about personal chemistry. So salespeople should be able to, or if you're running your own business, by the way, you are of course a salesperson, because that's one of the many things you have to do when you're running your own show. Now you should be able to get some of the way there on your own, but if you want to get to the top, to the preferred, the top box, where you become that trusted advisor, which is where we're all looking to get to, then I would suggest some sort of, not necessarily me, but some sort of coaching or mentoring can help you get there. Now, so that's about difference. It's about being preferred. And I've replicated that triangle because I want to talk about what salespeople often get wrong, is on benefits. And I spent a lifetime in technology sales. So I'm going to talk about laptops. Most of us have got at least one of those. And these days we're all flooded by technology anyway. So you want to buy a laptop. Well, that's okay, Mr. Customer. We sell laptops. We must be right for you. No, it's not good enough. Okay, so if you sell laptops, which has this benefit, it makes you more productive. Well, so does every other laptop. It makes you more productive if used correctly. And if you've got handwriting like mine, typed messages are a real boon. So productivity in itself isn't a differentiator. Well, okay, Mr. Prospect, the way that we deliver our IT means it's 30% cheaper. Well, how is that possible? Because the way we configure our data centers, our networks, means they're more reliable, there's less downtime. When you switch it on, you can be absolutely dependent on it's all going to work, and your cloud access, it's going to be 99.999 certain that you're going to be able to function and do your work. Because there's nothing worse than not being able to get access to the internet. It's like the whole world comes to a stop. So that would be a differentiator. It may not be enough, but that would be a differentiator. And the next thing might be, well, actually, not only can we deliver it high quality, cheaper in the long run, but 75% of our clients renew their agreements at the end of the first term. So your term might be 12 months, might be 36 months. But if 75% of your clients are renewing, that also says we have great customer service as well. And that gets you into benefits and not features, which is very important to get away from that. In other words, it's what can your customer, your client, achieve by working with you and your company that they couldn't achieve working through someone else. And no one said it's easy, but that's where you've got to get to if you're going to be effective at selling. Here's another point, excuse me, is that there are different relationship types. Now, I've been working, not now, but I was working in selling technology to the banking community for a number of years. And I had a client that worked for NatWest. We did a deal about a new IT network for their London campus office campus network for NatWest. And that was an existing client, in other words. So I want you to think about your own businesses when I take you through this. So that was an existing client. Now that person moved to Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS, which is a big global bank. It's particularly big here in the UK, where they have a retail bank and an investment banking arm as well. And they moved to RBS. Now, I argued to my sales manager that that was a piece of new business because we'd never before traded with RBS. We traded with NatWest. And the reason I argued is because new business got you a greater percentage on sales commission. It was worth more to the company. So you got a bigger commission check at the end of the month or year. So it's worth arguing. But also there's a new concept. So when John, my contacts that I built that trust and reputation with over years, when he went to RBS, we did business there as well because people's careers are at stake if it all goes wrong. So now he left that organization after a number of years, and he went to work for a German bank, which was nothing to do with NatWest or RBS. But because I had that relationship and that level of trust already, and he was a senior person within that German bank, then I was able to win a significant piece of business through that. Now that's not the reason I tell you that is because different client relationships are not just about the person, they are mainly about the person, but they can move. What's to stop you? And I ask you to think about your personal relationships, people that you've traded with over the years or decades in some cases. Where have they gone now? Could they be a suspect or a prospect for your business? So relationships have different kind of nuances. I just want you to think about that and just just for a second reflect on that a little bit. So who's moved within your professional network? Are you connected on LinkedIn? Okay, so we're about on time. So relationships can also have that was a horizontal dynamic. Client relationships can also have what I would call a vertical dynamic. Do you remember that pyramid that I put up a few slides ago? If you're in the Me Too category, right down the bottom, we would call that, in academia anyway, we would call that a donor-recipient relationship. You're taking their cash and you're delivering a bit of product or a bit of service. It's not particularly strategic, it's very transactional. And buying a coffee in the morning might be an example of that, or even buying a laptop. If you buy lots of laptops, buying a laptop might be part of that as a commodity sort of purchase. Moving up to the middle layer, that could be value added. So you provide a little bit of expertise, not just product, but a little bit of consultancy as well. There's some value add there. And again, moving up to preferred, right in the middle there where it says trusted advisor, that's where you want to be. That's the minimum of where you want to be with your clients in order to get that rebuy. As I'm going to be stealing that, Mark. I really like that. Okay, thank you. Steal with pride. That's what I always say. So trusted advisor. Now, if you've got the whole company on your side, and the whole company is behind you, you can go several notches further. And some examples we've seen in the telecoms industry over the years, people like BT, EE, T-Systems, all those guys, T-Mobile, I beg your pardon, getting together, forming joint ventures on some occasions and forming special purpose vehicles and putting some of their assets in and some of the other parties' assets in, lumping them in, and then going to market on their own because they can win more business at less cost generally and create more profit for those individuals. And if it works really well, if there's a strategic fit and the resources fit, then you can go to a full-blown merger of equals. And that's happened a lot in the pharmaceutical industry recently, where they're now a lot of these deals are actually born out of vanity and ego. We all get that, but the way that they sell it to the Financial Times, let's say, is that it's going to be, it's generally called a merger because there are tax advantages in doing that, but that would be much more than a zero-sum game. Anyway, I hope that's just food for thought rather than the the lesson as such. Okay, so common mistakes that are made. Before I get into what I hope is cream on the cake, it's failing to listen. We talked about listening earlier. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use in that proportion, that ratio. Talking too much. Have you ever come across a person, may be a salesperson, may have something else, they just can't stop talking? Sometimes I feel like that myself, but there's an objective here. But they're just constantly in broadcast mode. It's tiresome to listen. They're not hearing what the client really wants, and they'll never really be an effective salesperson because they're just not listening, they're just not hearing it. And it's very frustrating as a buyer if someone's just trying to say, yeah, but what about this feature, what about that feature? They're trying to sell you something you don't want to buy. It's irritating. And I'm afraid to say I've had to face palm people and say, stop this right here, right now, because this isn't going anywhere. And sometimes you just got to be like that. So don't be that person. That's what I'm saying. So they're not qualifying the sale properly. It's going to frustrate you. It's going to result in a loss, and it's certainly going to frustrate them. And they'll remember you or your employee for all the wrong reasons. And trying to sell them what you want to sell to them as opposed to what they want to buy. And that's really important to discern between the two. Again, all back to listening. And sometimes if you're ineffective in selling, and you're not listening properly, you may actually leave money on the table. They may have had a budget of, let's say, £100 for this product, and you've only got £70 off them. You could have sold them something else to make up the £100, or you could have achieved a better price outcome for your product. That's an arbitrary number, but you get the principle. You may actually leave opportunity on the table for someone else to come in and hoover up as the next visitor after you. So you're wasting time, yours and the clients. We're back to features and benefits again. So my laptop has an i7 processor. Ask yourself, so what? Look at your website. I do this, I do that. So what? What does that mean? Well, it means that my clients can A, B, C. That's the benefits. Asking so what? And it's a hard question to be on the receiving end of because it forces you to think, but ask so what? Talking to the wrong people. If you're involved in a big deal, there are going to be people there who will love to hear all about your products and service and what you did on Friday and all of that, but they're not capable of giving you a deal. And you've got part of your almost like being a detective is part of your sales process. Your skill set will be trying to uncover not just the people that can say yes, but as probably more importantly, the person that can say no and bring all your activities to a shuddering halt. And they're not always the most senior people in the organization, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, right. So this is, first of all, I hope it's going to really work. But I want to run you through what does great sales skills look like? So I'm going to play a particular scene, and I hope you'll recognize the program. It lasts just over a minute. I'm going to play it all the way through. If you can hear it clearly, give me a thumbs up when I play it. If you can't hear it, give me a thumbs down and I'll do something about it. We're going to play it all the way through, and then we're going to go back and break it down, and then we'll be done, if that's okay. So here we go then.
Your money, Mr. Kimber. Rescued from the Lay brothers and returned to you with a request for a fair hearing. Your own protection is failing, Mr. Kimber. Your boys are taking cuts. I want to suggest that from now on, you contract out your racetrack security to the Peaky Blinders. We'd be saving you a lot of money, Mr. Kimber. A lot of money. In return, you give us 5% of the take and 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River Severn, rising to 6 after 1 year if we are all satisfied with the service. What do you say, Mr. Kimber?
I say you took business to my accountant. I want to dance.
Okay, right, brilliant. So you should have recognised that's West Midlands finest. One second, West Midlands finest. Thomas Shelby from Peaky Blinders and my wife's favourite program by a million miles, absolutely. And this is a great scene. I think it's from the first series, later on, episode 5 or 6, and we'll play that through. He's made a pitch. I'm just going to break it down, and I'm going to show you the kind of skills that I think Thomas Shelby is displaying, which you want to think about. How can I, you know, the context is a bit of fun, but there is a lot of truth behind what's going on. So let's have a look and break it down a little bit. Here we go. Okay, right. So now you're not going to go to your next meeting with a bag load of cash and drop it on the table. At least I hope not, because there are laws against that. But what did he do there? Metaphorically, he went in, there's a number of things went on. It's called a pattern interrupt. He interrupted what was going on at that meeting. He came in with a pattern interrupt. He grabbed their attention. Now, if you can imagine, we're not going to be doing too many face-to-face meetings, or at least I'm not for a while. So the October 2020 equivalent of that will maybe be on a Zoom call, making an impact, or maybe cold calling. If anyone, I still do that. If you're still involved in cold calling, you've got to interrupt someone's day, and you've got to grab their attention really, really quickly. And let's see what happens next. That was the point.
Your money, Mr. Kimber. Rescued from the Lay brothers and returned to you with a request for a fair hearing. Your own protection is failing, Mr. Kimber. Your boys are taking cuts. I want to suggest that from now on, you contract out your racetrack security to the Peaky Blinders.
Okay, right. So what was happening there? So this guy, Thomas, has paid Billy Kimber, the gangster, the ultimate compliment as far as I'm concerned. Do you remember we talked about value proposition, your messages to the market? Well, in more nuanced, in more complex sales, you can have a value proposition at a particular account. Really zeroed in messages for that particular client that they need to be hearing. So Thomas Shelby has done this enormous compliment. He's researched this client and understood what vendors are doing in the client, and he's gone with that most rarefied of gifts, which is insight. He's going to tell the client something they don't already know about their business. Now, the moment he challenged, absolutely. The moment you can tell your client something they don't already know about their business, does many, many things for you. First of all, that puts you straight up there in the trusted advisor bracket, in that top bracket where you want to be, to get that first phone call when the customer's next out to market for something else. You've paid them a huge compliment. It suggests that you're prepared to invest time, effort, resources. It takes bravery, absolutely, to challenge the status quo. And he made an offer which was highly relevant to what was going on. So basically, your Tommy's competition, the incumbent provider, we would call it in modern day parlance, is stealing from Billy Kimber. I would argue a high risk occupation. And because Billy Kimber has a particular way of dealing with people that steal from him. And he's come in with a counter proposal. So he's saying, I've come to you, outsource your racetrack security to us. So that's his proposition, which is going to solve Billy Kimber's problem. So just let's have a listen and see what happens next.
We'd be saving you a lot of money, Mr. Kimber. A lot of money. In return, you give us 5% of the take and 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River Severn.
Okay. Right, so he was arguing just there. Sorry.
Money. In return, you give us 5% of the take and 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River
Right,
Severn.
okay. So he has argued just then, sorry, technology is doing its thing, but he's argued there, in return for solving this problem, I'm going to charge you 5% to deal, and I want you to give me 3 racetracks, 3 of the racetracks from your portfolio of race courses that you provide security at. I just want 3 of them. Let me just go back and see whether we're going to make this work again. I think we will. Here we go.
And 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River Severn, rising to 6 after 1 year if we are all satisfied with.
Okay, right. So he's not only making an offer, he said, and if everything looks good after 12 months, we're actually going to double the value of that contract. We're going to increase it from 3 racetracks to 6 racetracks if everything looks good. And that does 2 things. It's called conditionality. If it all looks good, then we'll do this. But also he's got his own get out. Because both parties need to agree it's the right thing to do. And that's really important when you're negotiating. You may have had so much pain over the last 12 months with that client. And don't be embarrassed, by the way. Clients need to behave themselves. They need to be profitable for you. That you may decide you don't want to extend that contract. Thank you very much. You keep your money. You go back to the Lee brothers again. That is, you have rights and entitlements when you're negotiating. It's really important you don't lose sight of that. But that was the conditionality that was coming in. 3 race courses. If it all looks good after 12 months, we're all happy. That's his words. Then we'll increase it to 6. Okay, well, let's get
The service. What do you say, Mr. Kimber?
Okay, right. So that's what we call a test close. Now, Sydney earlier on mentioned always be closing. This is an example of that. A test close or a trial close. So you're not actually asking for the order. You're not saying, please, are you going to give me all of your racetrack business, Mr. Kimber? Oh, it's another thing, by the way. If you ask for all of your customers, all of your prospects business, that may be too big. That may be risky for them to give you the whole thing. So another part of that is, I think it was a very shrewd offer that we're just starting out in a business relationship here. We may hate each other. Just give us a little bit of business. Let's see how we get on. That was a really important message. Going back to this, he's asking, what do you think? He's not asking, give me all your business, because it's very easy to say no to that. It's very hard to say no. In fact, you couldn't say, when someone asks, what do you think? And you answer no, well, that doesn't make any sense. So you're asking what he thinks about it. So you're going to get whatever happens next is going to be gold dust if you're listening and listening actively. Okay, so what happened then? Nothing. A big fat nothing happened then. Now, I don't know if any of you have been in a business meeting and all of a sudden it goes quiet. We might call that a pregnant pause. It might go silent and everyone panics. If you don't know what's going on, it can be terrifying, literally terrifying, when everyone's looking around at everyone else thinking, okay, well, we didn't rehearse this. What's happening now? Silence can be your most powerful asset. It's an incredibly powerful communications tool. I bet David Andrews will agree with that. And it's really, really important that you don't get terrified by it, but you are able to hold the silence. It takes a lot of experience and some courage, personal courage, to do that, because it's really interesting what happens next. And then your next meeting, if you come to silence, don't be tempted to fill in that silence. Just wait patiently. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Wait patiently just to see what happens. Let's have a look and see what happens here.
I say talk business to my accountant. I want to dance.
Right, now, hopefully you heard that. He says, I say you talk business to my accountant. Now, was that a yes? Something else might have been. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's what Mark was rightly pointed out. It's a buying signal. He is, if you're into outsourcing, talk to my accountant. That's where you would go into a process called due diligence. That's where the bean counters, and apologies to anyone if you are a finance person, but the bean counters are going to be getting around the table, and you definitely want to control that meeting, let me tell you. But they're going to be getting around the table, and they're going to be making sure that the numbers stack up. On the customer side, they're going to make sure that the service fits. On the vendor side, our side, Tommy Shelby's side, they're going to make sure that they can make enough profit with the deal that's finally arrived at. But it wasn't a yes, let's do it. It was talk numbers with my accountant. So and this goes to, remember we talked about not the most powerful man in the room or person in the room, I beg your pardon, but basically if the accountant says it's okay, then Billy Kimber is probably going to go with it. Now, I just want to show you on this, you'll have to look at your screen really carefully, but I thought this was a masterstroke. Have a look at the accountant's face with what happens next. Okay, now, you see that little smile? Okay, so do you think he hasn't heard that line before? It's like, Mr. Accountant, whatever your name is, I don't know his name, but you need to make this deal work. That is basically what happened in that tiny bit. And that's why listening is so much more than just shutting up. It's observing and all sorts of other stuff. Okay, right. So anyway, I'm just in the oh my goodness, I took too long on that. So apologies if we're running out of time, but I'm into the last 2 minutes of this. I'm gonna whiz through this if you don't mind. I took a little bit too long doing that. Anyway, can I tell you about? I'm launching a masterclass. It's on Wednesday. If you can't make Wednesday, we will work something else out. But if you liked, all of these skills are all talked about in some detail and some fashion in the 7-step masterclass. Everything from value proposition at the very start, which is the one, Jonathan, that happens on Wednesday, right through to maximizing yield, which is every Wednesday right out until the 2nd of December. There's an early bird if you're interested in that. Until midnight tonight, I've extended that. But I would love to see you on that program. If you have any questions, you can message me by all means, but I'm running it. Even if we don't speak to each other ever again, I really hope you've enjoyed what you've heard this evening. Feel free to make any comments or ask me questions direct, or if you want to have a 15-minute one-to-one session with me to talk through some sales situation that you've got with you and your business, or a potential deal that you're trying to land, I'm happy to give you 15 minutes as a gratis, if you like. I'm happy to do that if it takes us kind of forward. But anyway, wrapping up now, excuse me. So develop excellent communication skills, interpersonal skills. That's really what sales is all about. You don't have to be swinging from the chandeliers, especially listening. 2 ears, 1 mouth. And learn to love solving customers' problems, because people will pay big money to make their business pains go away. So really learn to hear what's going on. You'll learn about how to monetize those problems as well, was a really important process. And because I'm really sorry to be, I can't believe I'll be giving anyone bad news, but this whole coronavirus thing is quite equalizing in certain respects, because everyone has to be aware of it. It's not like a country specific thing. It's all the way around the world. You're going to have to get great over the phone or on Zoom. We talked about the 93% earlier, because face-to-face meetings, even if you're comfortable having them, your client or potential client may not be comfortable having them. So again, that's part of your they have rights and entitlements in meeting as well. Zoom, I think, makes you far more effective anyway. Initially, you can go through a qualification process over Zoom, and I think it's an incredibly effective tool. And lastly, focus on the deal, not on the commission, because I have lost one in particular deal, but probably several deals when I was thinking about, I can't wait till that deal lands because I can buy whatever. Focus on the deal. You can spend the money later on, but focus on landing the deal, because that lots of great things happen from then. So anyway, thank you very much for paying so much attention. Yes, Juliana, don't make assumptions. Ask of you and me and all of that. But thank you very much. That QR code, that will take you through to salesmarvel.co.uk. There's loads of hints and tips and stuff on that. And you can message me, keith@salesmarvel.co.uk. I've really enjoyed sharing this with you this evening. I hope it's been helpful for you as well. Thanks ever so much, everyone. And I'll look forward to hearing from you really, really soon. Take care, everyone.